Oh, it says my screen sharing's disabled. Sorry. There we go. Welcome, ladies. A couple familiar faces, and I'm so excited really to be in this position to be talking to you today all about what I do, my love for numbers and profit and business. It is so important to me that as business owners, we're making a living from what we're doing and really just like getting to see our vision and our passion for what we do come to life. So super excited that you're joining us today. And I want to start by just talking a little bit about why we're even in this room to learn. If you're anything like me, you really resonate with the word like accidental entrepreneur. To me, it means that we've stepped into this place where we are really good at something. We have an industry or a passion of this one thing, but we didn't really set out to like, hey, I love business. I know all the different facets and I want to do it all. We're like, hey, I was an accountant. I wanted to deliver amazing accounting services to people. I wanted to have an impact on their lives and watch what I did have a trickle down effect. But I definitely did not know what it was going to take to be an entrepreneur and really run a business successfully. And I will tell you, that was an ultimate surprise for me. I went to business school and I stepped into business and was like, I have no hot clue what I'm doing here. There's so many facets to it and levers that you can pull and skills that you have to learn that after that first initial like 1 year in where you're like just hot to do anything, all of a sudden we're realizing that there's all these different components. And I want to work through with you today the 5 that I have seen across every industry, across every size of business. If we can get these 5 pieces right to fit together to make a really nice picture, that is where the ultimate success comes in. That is where we're making money. The bank account is in perfect condition, so we are feeling good. We don't have any money issues. We're taking time off. We're not hustling. We're not burning ourselves out. We're coming into work refreshed every day. And the ultimate is that we are having an impact and a result on the people that we're serving. So it's just that state of like absolute flow when you're going into work every day, even if that's in your home office. But that is what business means to me. And if you're in a position where you're here and you're eager to learn, I just want you to know we all come into business with a skill set and we all become aware that there's actually so many more pieces to learn. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. Just pride yourself on the fact that I'm learning what it takes to really be in that position where I love this business. Okay, here's what I know for sure. The key to running a successful business that has the passion and the profits, and you're not burning the candle at all ends to get there. The key to that is your ability to be objective and remove yourself from the equation, even though you're all in it. I know so many of us, we refer to ourselves as like, I am the business. There's no way I could step out. But your ability to see your business from the outside and have that 50,000 foot view is absolutely going to be the key to your success. And when we are able to do that, we're able to look at these 5 levers I'm going to teach you. We're able to make really smart decisions. So we're utilizing our time well, and that is where the flow happens. So developing that skill doesn't happen overnight. It takes effort and it takes being intentional. It takes time away. You have to give yourself the space and the capacity to do that. It means not leaving it to when you're at your lowest energy points at the end of the day. It means getting out of your regular routine so that you can see the business from the outside in, doing what it takes to have that view. All right. So we're going to dive in to the 5 puzzle pieces, and I'm going to go a little bit more in depth, but here's the pieces that I know, especially knowing most of your businesses and the stage you're at. These are so critical. So there's five of them. Number 1 is the amount of time. Time is finite. Here we can utilize other people's time, but we also have a limited amount that we can use and give to our business and give to others. Number 2 is owner pay. I know people hate talking about kind of what am I going to be paid for my business? So many people tell me like, oh, it feels greedy that I want to be paid from this, or like it feels like, oh, now I'm asking people for money, and there's so much mindset that goes behind it. But this has to be a lever that we work with, because what I know to be true is if you're not getting paid, you're going to give up, especially if you're not getting paid what you think you're worth. Number 3 is the expenses of your business. Okay, so we have these expenses, they fluctuate. We got to cover them to make profit. Number 4 is your ideal client. Sometimes we forget about this, especially that first year in business. We are so focused on like, I want to do better. I want to run this business. Like, here's my vision for it. And you need that so early on that a lot of the time it's really hard to step in. Marketing companies do a great job about talking about how to talk to these people, but I want to dive a little bit further in than that. And then the 5th component is what we offer and what we sell. So I'm going to start diving in, but these are kind of like the 5 overarching components. We're going to talk about each one, and then I'm going to show you really where the magic happens. So stick with me through all 5, and then I'm going to show you how it all plays out. Okay, number 1, time. If you aren't aware of the fact that time needs to be put in a container, I want to tell you that the way that I envision time is like, especially when we work on our business, is like water. It just like fills all the space. And a lot of the business owners that I work with, especially on the hustle component and when they're feeling burnt out, it's because they're not managing and putting like some box boundaries, constraint around the amount of time that they're giving their business. This is the number 1 area where I love to challenge ourselves. Working evenings and working weekends, or, trying to juggle all the things is great as a backup plan of like, wow, I've got these opportunities. I want to make the most of them. But it is not a business plan in terms of like, this is how I operate every day. The one analogy that I gave recently is that we always seem to live our lives like as a culture at 100, the speed limit's 100, we're going 110. But the problem with this is that we are not leaving ourselves any room for when an issue comes up. We got to put this fire out, but we don't have any capacity to do it. An amazing opportunity hits our plate. We don't have the ability to put in more hours that would really have an impact on helping us succeed. So knowing how much time you have to give is one of the very first areas. What does your, maybe not like your dream, okay, I want to work 2 hours a day, but what does your ideal day on an average day in your business look like? How many hours are you giving it? And I want you to be realistic, because things tend to take longer than we estimate, right? The saying is that like we overestimate what we can accomplish in a year and underestimate what we can accomplish in 5. And that is so true when we are talking about planning our business. We always overestimate. I don't know about you, but my to-do list tends to have 75 things on it on a day. And I'm like, I don't know. I thought I was going to get this all done. So I really want you to be realistic. If you haven't already, what is incredibly powerful is a time audit. And I know this scares people. I recently have talked to multiple of my clients about doing time audits in their own business, and they're like, oh, I have so much resistance to it. And the resistance comes from this place of like, what if people see what I'm really working on? That's what one client told me. What if they see like, I know things I'm doing are taking longer than they need to. And when I ask you to do a time audit, it is not about that. Wherever you're at right now is perfect. It is perfect to set you up to learn. It's perfect to set you up to do something different. It is absolutely not a place of shame. So we need to dig into a time audit and understanding so that we can honestly say to ourselves, like, yeah, I can do that. And this is how long it's going to take me. Instead of pretending that it's all going to work out okay and getting to the end of every day feeling like we're behind. So start with a time audit. If you're not sure what you're up to, if you're not sure how much time you really have to work, it's going to be an amazing place to really set you up for success. But when we're filling out this like picture, the most important thing is having an understanding of how many hours a day you can work. And then we're going to also need to know what it is you're doing and how much time that takes. So understanding the amount of time you have is going to allow us to make decisions about hiring help, delegating, about eliminating, and really just like sets the foundation up for that success and really sets you up to leave behind hustle. Guys, there's always, the biggest thing here is like, there is always an option. Okay. I love the puzzle. It's not like when we're going through this, it's all about like, how do we make these work? And what's another way of doing this? And what's something in between? Right. I was talking to my sister today and she had an opportunity in front of her. She actually wants to be maybe a therapist and maybe a life coach. And she's like trying to talk to me about these options. And I'm like, well, why don't you mix them two together? And we tend to think like so black and white, like here's an option and here's an option. But this is all about finding that in between. And that is where the magic happens. We find these options that are like, this is it. So let's figure out the time piece. After we figured out how much time we are willing to give to our business, we also need to understand what we want to pay ourselves. Now, I love to come at this from a couple different perspectives. Number one, we have to talk about it and it has to be there and it has to be an appropriate amount, because what I know is that we are willing to do things for a certain amount of time, but then we're going to get exhausted. So if we are not getting paid, you're going to have a family member or a spouse telling you you could be paid more somewhere else, or I need you to contribute financially this much. And that's going to start weighing on your relationships. Or you're not paying yourself enough and you're going to start feeling like, man, what am I doing? I don't feel valuable. All of the mindset stuff comes into play when we are not compensating ourselves. We'll start comparing it to like a past position of like, wow, I used to make this much money and now I don't know what I'm doing here. So we need to be able to address like, how much do I honestly want to be paid? Because I see people in those first couple of years not necessarily saying like, this is it. This is how much I need to be making. They don't put a number on it. They're leaving it to chance. They're like, okay, well, I'm just going to try really hard and then I hope to get here. But what I'll tell you is when you have that number in mind, you start making decisions from a place of, does this serve where I'm going or does it not? Instead of just like, well, I hope this works today. So understanding, okay, what do you want to be paid? A really great starting point is a couple things that I kind of already like dropped hints on. Number one, what have you been paid previously? Especially if you were already in a very similar industry, what were you paid then? Number two, what do you need to be paid? What do you need to earn to live off of? Or what is going to feel good? Like, hey, I really need to earn this. And then I always love to compare this with, what does this look like in the industry? I just like to use that as my test. I'm not saying, hey, I love being like at the highest level of like, wow, this is my group of people and my niche, and I'm getting paid up here. I love that. That's goals. But also when we're like, if we're just not sure and we're starting out, let's use what does the industry pay as a starting point, because we're going to build off of that, right? We're going to make our business efficient and we're going to be killer at what we do. And then we are going to be highly paid for it. But if we're too drastically, like if you're an aerospace engineer and then you're like, hey, I'm going to go work at McDonald's, your pay level is a little different. So let's start with what we can achieve and then work our way up. So just double checking that test of like, okay, does this feel good? Are people willing to pay this? If you have this really large kind of gap between what you're hoping for and what people, your customers, are willing to pay, it's not going to feel great to start with. And then we maybe need to revisit your customer base. We might need to revisit your products. We'll get to those kind of like, how do we work this out? But starting with your owner pay is also very crucial. Okay, number three, the finances. So needing to have an understanding of what you're paying for every month. I know like everybody in this room, your business models are pretty lean. So meaning that you don't have a lot of expenses, but you really do need to be aware of what it is that you're paying for every month, the subscriptions, the coaches, the events that you're going to. What does it look like? Because we want to work that into the plan of, this is what I need to earn and here's how I'm going to get there. All of those things come into play. The easiest way to do this, first of all, if you have bookkeeping, like pat on the back to you, I'm celebrating that big time. If you don't, this does not need to be hard. Okay, so grab a bank statement. It shows you every month. Even if you're scared to look at what's happening, go take a look at the bottom. It summarizes like, here's how much came out of the bank. Go just take a look at that number. The same with any credit cards that you use for business. Ideally, you've done your bookkeeping, but at a minimum, just knowing the number that you're spending on a monthly basis is one of those starting points. It's one of the building blocks we're going to work off of. The other thing I would say is I get questions often like, well, like this month I have this large expense, and then a couple months later I maybe have this big expense, but that's not the average month. The other way to do this, if that's how your business tends to operate, is to look at 12 months, add them up, and then just kind of divide it by 12, because we're going to look at things on like a monthly basis. What does every month look like? I like doing things by month because it gives us a long enough period of time that it's like not fluctuating day to day. I don't know if you've ever been like taught to plan things by the day, but I'm like, man, like the fluctuations are all over the place, even with time. If I get things done and then don't, and like it's all over the place. So let's work with a month so it brings some stability to us and we feel like we have some control over it. And it's also not too long that we are like not motivated by goals. Okay, so bringing together the business's finances, what are we paying for? This is one area when we start putting the puzzle together that tends to fluctuate as we like hire out help, and we get to play with this number quite a bit. But at least understanding like what does it look like month to month is another starting point. And your ideal client. So the fourth piece. Okay. We talk about knowing everybody in this room. We have so many people that will definitely understand the marketing terminology behind ideal client. When we're coming at it from a marketing perspective, we are thinking of things like, how these people talk, where are they showing up? We're trying to find words that are important to them. But I want you to take it a step further, because the reality is, as much as the business is about us, as much as we're driving the vision is actually about the customer. Without the customer, we don't have a business. We have to give them something that they value, something that they're willing to pay for. So beyond just the words of like, okay, where do I find them? Who are they? What is it in your services or in your products that they truly value? What do they want to experience? One of the examples that I give that is so, can really outline this is a massage therapy office. Two totally different customers. I have one office that I deal with that is very like medical based. They like very much treat car accident victims, and they're there for like sports injury. The people coming into that clinic want a high level of education. They want very talented massage therapists, and they really don't care what it looks like. On the other hand, I have another client that I work with that is a spa. They're designed for moms to come relax. They have a subscription model. It supports like your more mental health than your physical health. And that's what it's there for. The two customers, even though it's the exact same offering, are so different. Now, you could imagine if you're the mom who wants to go in for a massage and you're showing up to the sports injury clinic, you're feeling kind of let down. I want the peaceful music. I want to feel relaxed when I come into your space. On the other hand, I don't value all of those things. I don't care about the glass of water. I don't care about the robe if I'm there to get a knee looked at after I hurt it at soccer. Right? So knowing that helps us make decisions about those business expenses when we are deciding what are we going to invest in, what matters to our people. Do they want a welcome package when they come on board with us? If we're in a coaching industry, do they value that? Do they feel seen when you as a coach say like, hey, great job, we've been working together a month? Or are they like, no, like, let's just get this done, I want my copywriting. Right? So really understanding your customer, not just from a marketing perspective, but in how they want to move through your business, the touch points and what they want to feel in each of those moments, and how they want to like really be respected and feel valued. Okay. So understanding that and deep diving into that is so important. And that ties into my fifth piece, is your product offerings. So having a list of here is how I serve my people is great for your team, first of all, as like a standard operating procedure, just kind of experience. It helps you delegate, but also for your own knowledge, like what is it, being very clear on each of your offerings, how it supports your customer's ladder. So where are they coming in at? How are you helping them through the next level? Even if we're talking to, like, for example, we're talking to small retailers, right? Like, what products are we offering them next? How are we keeping them in our world? How are we helping serve them? It doesn't matter if you're service-based, you still have that ladder, and you want to know how you serve people at each level. What is your plan, maybe to extend that ladder a little bit at the next level? What, even from a price point, are you getting people into your world, and does it match up with that ideal client? Okay, that was the 5 pieces. So this is where the magic happens. We have all these 5 pieces put together, and this is honestly like the putting together is the legwork, but where we really find the magic is when we start using each piece. Now, I don't think I've ever in 15 years worked with a client that had it all perfectly laid out. Okay, so if one of these pieces gets put together and you're like, wow, this doesn't fit, this is my challenge, like use this as fun, like, okay, what can we do here? We as entrepreneurs, I guarantee, like, you've got resourcefulness that most people don't have, and that is, we need to use that skill set to make this amazing. I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay, the very first, there's 2 steps. The first step is understanding your break even. So those monthly business expenses that we talked about, we're going to take those into account. So we're going to add those. And then the second piece that we're going to add is your owner pay monthly. Now, for service-based businesses and most of the people who are on the call, that's going to be it. We're going to know this is how much money we need to make every month to break even. We're going to have the business's expenses paid for, and we are going to be paying ourselves. Here is what we need to make to just break even. This is always our starting point. Of course, we want profit, but this is a pretty, like, this is an okay world. We're making how much money we want, and we're covering all the bills. If you are a product-based business, I'm going to add this in. So if you're, in case anybody's like dealing with clients or anybody who's listening to the replay is a product-based business, this is going to have one extra level of complexity. Or if you also are a service-based business where you have employees that you're hiring out, there is a level of complexity because when we bring in money, some of it goes to paying for that product or service provider, and then we get as a business to keep the rest. In the accounting world, that's called like your cost of goods sold. You would see it separated on a set of financial statements, and then the rest is called your like fixed expenses or your overhead. These numbers really are about overhead. This is that variable amount. It tends to fluctuate based on how much you're selling. So to give you an idea, if you were selling a t-shirt for $50, the t-shirt itself might cost you, let's say, $20. So you're making $30 of profit off of each t-shirt that would then pay for your website and your insurance and like all those fancy things. So knowing that number of like on average from every t-shirt that I sell, I keep, 60%, that number is important. And how this ends up working is, for example, if your monthly expenses were $10,000 and your gross profit off of your sales is 60%, then you actually need a higher amount of revenue to make up what your break even is every month. So we're going to start with that as a baseline. And then what we are going to do is going into the other piece of putting in our entire product suite, and then also the tasks, all the non-revenue generating tasks that we do. And as we put in our product suite, we're going to say, here's how much money I make off of this product. Here's how many I sell in a month. This means monthly. This is how much revenue I generate from it. Also, here's how much time this takes me to deliver that product or service. And then for the tasks, obviously the revenue piece is irrelevant, but you still have hours allocated to it. And we're going to come up with, this is how much money we generate in a month, and here's how much we work in a month. And I'm going to show you how it's all put together. So this is kind of condensed into one screen, but sorry, brought up the chat. I saw that there was a couple. Okay, so condensed into one screen. I usually like to expand this into a spreadsheet, which I can send out afterwards or have Inbal attach. But this is like my perfect example of how this looks. So this company has 2 products monthly. Okay, they've listed out their product suite. They have a $200, coaching. They have 10 clients that they do coaching for. That means they make $2,000 a month off of this. It takes them 20 hours to deliver these 10 coaching sessions, okay? And then I do like to have the customer, like, just being mindful of like, who are they, and keeping that in line with my ideal client. They have a second product, it's $15. It's like an e-course. They sell 25 of these e-courses a month. It means they make $375. It takes them 2 hours, maybe a marketing a month to do that. And so there's their product suite. Additionally, just to condense it, I added admin time, but yours is going to look like all these different things, the podcasts, the marketing, onboarding clients, all the different things. So we've got admin time, 15 hours. Now, the other piece that I mentioned was like the break even. So we know here, this particular client, they have business expenses, $250 a month. Their owner pay is $1,000. Maybe this owner, maybe this is a side gig for them. So they want to make $1,000 a month for their time. And so the break even is $1,250. These questions that I have written here and that I'm going to verbalize to you, this is how I think this through. And this is why I said this is the magic, because this is compiling the pieces, the 5 pieces, and putting the math together. But then it's the analysis. It's using your brain to say, okay, does this all work? And how can we make it better? That is the magic. So this person wants to make $1,250 a month at a minimum to break even. We're going to compare that to the monthly income. Okay, this is $2,375. Okay, great. Sometimes in this instance, this works out, but maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then maybe we have to come back to, okay, can I lower my expenses? Can I lower my pay? Can I increase what I'm selling, right? Those are the options that we have. The other thing we would want to look at is the number of hours that we said we had available to work. So in this case, this person's working 37 hours. Does that fit? That's almost 10 hours a week for a side hustle. Does that fit your schedule? Maybe you need to come back and be like, hey, I need to reduce the number of hours. Is there a way to make one of these products more efficient so that I can still deliver the same quality without having to work anymore, right? Reducing the numbers of hours that way. Maybe it's putting systems in place and software in place so we're reducing our administrative hours. Maybe it's bringing somebody on board. I give you that example because if you're increasing your staff, all of a sudden your business expenses go up. This is how it changes the whole picture. The business expenses go up, the break-even number goes up, and then we want to see like, okay, how does this work now? How many hours am I working? Am I making enough money? The other things that we want to be looking at is like, okay, like let's look at the product suite. Does this serve people the way that we want it to? Are my customers lit up to buy? These numbers that I have in here, a lot of the time when I'm working with clients through this process, we're using like, I want to sell 10 of these products instead of like, I am selling 10. They're talking about maybe bringing a new product into their suite. And my question is always, how far off from you are, like from that number do you think you are? If you're only selling 2 of these in a month, this is where from like a ops perspective, I just get driven nuts when people do like revenue forecasting because it falls short of being practical. Of course, we can say like, I want to make $10,000 a month and I'm going to sell X products, but then we have to look at the steps beyond that. Like, how much time does it take to sell it? Do we have that capacity? Do we have the audience to sell it to? Do we have eyes on our product or service that we're like, hey, we can actually sell this? So when we're doing this, there is a level of just like revenue forecasting. Oh, I have this product and I want to sell this number, but then we need to challenge ourselves and say like, how realistic is this? Are there some stepping stones in between? A really great example of how this affected one client that I was working with is they were doing all the things. They had a whole bunch of products here. They had all this time, but they also had all these team members in place where they're like, okay, we're doing all the things, but they weren't selling enough. So they weren't breaking even every month. And what we came back to was like, okay, your whole model, all these 5 pieces, is based on this idea that you're going to sell a certain number of widgets every month, and you're not there and you don't have the audience to be there. So how do we make changes within the business that maybe you cut some non-essential work out and focus on, client-facing work so that you're the one doing it instead of team members? Maybe it means starting some new affiliate programs to help bring in customers faster, but there were some options there, and it was really about getting honest of like, okay, we can't just say we're going to sell 10 of these a month. We have to have a plan in place to actually go out and do it. So really, this is how I put it together. The 5 pieces. I have so many clients that are like, wow, when I put down the amount of time, I realized that I'm going to have to cut all these tasks because I don't show up well for my business. I don't show up well to sell to people when I am this overworked. Making different decisions because most of us are online entrepreneurs. We're on the internet all the time, and it's screaming at us marketing wise to make investments, promising us to propel ourselves. But, in my experience, the best thing you can do is get in front of your clients and work. It's not to necessarily invest in the next thing. It's get yourself in a room, get yourself meeting people. That's why I absolutely love Like Minded Collective, because that's what you do for us, Inbal, is like get us and where we can show and highlight what we do well. But that is where the work comes in, and we can really focus on like, wow, spending 17 hours a week on personal development. No wonder I'm not where I want to be financially, right? We actually get to see this in numbers. And I know that this scares a lot of people because it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't have been doing this. Maybe I shouldn't have been spending money on this. But guys, the problem is going to continue. It just goes on and on and on until you've addressed it, until you've looked at it. And so this is a tool of empowerment. It is not a tool of shame. It's like, how can I make this awesome? And when you put it on paper and really plan it out, you get to put those 5 pieces together. And I've said it already. This is where the magic happens. So I would love to take questions from people of like, okay, this is what this looks like for my business, but I want to leave you with 3 points, okay? Number 1, if you're not looking at numbers in terms of time and money, you are leaving the success of your business to chance. And I can tell you, there's nobody that I know that's like, hey, I post on social media and I don't look at the stats. I don't look at the likes. I don't look at the shares. I don't look at the follows. Of course you do. And money should be no different, because the cash is king saying is so true. Like money drives our business. Money drives our money drives our communities, and we can't deny it. So if you're not tracking time and money, you're really just hoping that your business is successful. And I know that we're all here to do great things. So no more leaving the success of business to chance. And asking yourself, okay, guys, I had to get so serious with myself when it came to the time. And I was doing so many things. I gave this example from something that happened a couple months ago. It's still embarrassing every single time I mention it. But I am the type of person who is very lit up. Like I'll see something from like, let's say a fitness coach. So I'm like, ooh, I could do this and tell people about what I do and just like tweak it this way. So I take all these screenshots, and then I have these screenshots on my phone that I then have to go deal with. And at some point there got to be so many screenshots. I'm like, okay, now I need to make a folder for the screenshots. And let me tell you the number of hours I invested in this. And I was like, this is not paying off to me. So I would ask myself, this is something I did before, and I had to ask myself again, is this something I would be willing to pay somebody to do? That is the best test of like your time of like, would I be willing to pay somebody to do this work? Because when you're paying somebody else, you better believe you want them to work efficiently for your money. And it's the exact same for yourself. You need to be working hard and efficiently and focused for what you do, because I know we all have other things. Like we don't want to be working 75 hours a day. we want to be here having impact, and then we also want to go live our lives. So asking yourself on the timepiece, would I be willing to pay somebody else to do this task? And it's going to help you become so much more efficient. And the last piece is effort is required, burnout is not. I am so thrilled that I see more and more people posting the reality, right? For the last year, I felt like bombarded almost by these ads of like, I work 2 hours a day, you can do the same. And I love that for people, especially as women. Like I like to be with my family. I like to play. I don't think we should be working the hours that maybe, corporate America told us that we had to for so many years. However, the reality is that anything that you build is going to require effort. So we get to decide how much effort that is. And then we also get to have a realistic expectation. Yesterday, I saw this amazing post by a leader in one of their industries, and they said that of course they work 2 hours a day now, and that's a point that they like love to talk about. But she's like, I spent 10 years building this business to get to this point so that I could do this. And I just like super appreciated the honesty. So effort is required. You're going to have to put some work in. It's not a 2-hour day unless this is a side hustle. It's going to take some effort, but you do not have to burn out. You do not have to work all hours of the day. And I really strongly encourage that, because as soon as you put some boundaries around how many hours you're working, you start getting so much more creative about how things get done and in how much time, and we start to become way more efficient. So that's kind of the third piece there. And really, it's just like my tagline is, you can have income and an impact without burnout. So I'd love to take some questions if you're interested in like, what does this look like for you? How do I put this into place? And just like, I want to support everybody. I know you're in different industries, so let me know if you have questions.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi.
Hello. I showed up super late, so I think I got in when you were on like step 4 of the 5, I believe it was.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm just gonna pop in. I wanted to say thank you. From what I got, you seem very, very informative in the information that you were giving, and I'd like to see if maybe I could schedule a separate, maybe 10-15 minute call. I
Yeah.
have questions, but I don't know if I want to be respectful of the time. I have an agency that I am in the process of launching. Now, it's not my first business, it's my fourth. So I do have, a lot of the experience as far as like all the things. But in this particular case, I have a structure that is super unique. And I'd love to maybe, pick your brain on the structure itself, as far as how I'm setting it up.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to shoot me a DM, we can book a time. I love looking at different businesses. This is where I love this model of like every business, every agency has a different model of like, how do we make money and how does it all work out? And the components, when you fit them together, have to work. So I'd love to look at yours and just see how you're doing it.
Okay, thank you so much. By the way, if you don't mind, I don't know if it's inappropriate to ask, but would you mind quickly sharing the 1, the 2, and the 3? I think those are just like in a nutshell.
Yeah. I'll just go quickly back to the page that's got all 5. Oops. So we have time.
Okay.
I was mentioning that at the end, like that is a super important constraint from the hustle, like burnout perspective. Owner pay. I mentioned that if you're not paying yourself accordingly, we're going to give up. We're going to want to sell. We're going to want to quit. And we don't want that. We want you here for the long term. The expenses of the business. So like based on the model, what you're doing in business, we need to know those so that we can make money over and above that. And then you probably came in at like, okay, who's your ideal client and your offerings.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Perfect.
Stacey. Sorry, I had to put Maya down for a nap. Does anybody else have any questions? That was so good. And it's so like easy to digest the way that you showed us. So I love that. It was so, so, so good.
I'd also love to extend the offer. Like sometimes the greatest value that we can like really get is somebody else's eyes on what we're doing, because they have that outside perspective of like, okay, we can pick it apart. So if anybody does that sheet, Imbo, what I'll do is I'll send you a workbook that I usually send out with this. So if anybody does that and says like, okay, here's my product offerings and the time I'm spending and how much I want to be paid and here's the expenses, I would be happy to like look at the pieces and be like, hey, here's where I see some challenges, or like kind of go through it. I just love that kind of stuff. I told Imbo before this, I'm such a geek when it comes to businesses. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about doing a time audit. How often do you do that for your business?
Yeah, so I tend to do it once a quarter. And I'll tell you, I came from the accounting industry. We used to be responsible literally for the 15 minutes. That's how we billed our clients. We had to tell them all the time that we billed. And that felt extreme to me and would feel extreme for me to suggest to any client. So I definitely don't say like, oh, every single day, but once a quarter, because your business tends to change enough in a quarter that you're like, oh, what am I working on? So that's how often I do it.
Okay. And then do you do it like for one day or do you do it for a week? Because I've heard both.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. The goal is always a week. It
Okay.
always falls off at day 3.
Okay.
There's always efficiency to be found though. Even when I get to day 3, I'm like, okay, one day, the problem is you can kind of like, or at least me, like I can lie to myself and be like, oh, it's not that bad. But like when I see 3 days, I'm like, oh, this is where my problem is.
Okay. Natalia, you had your self-off-mute. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, Stacey. This has been so fun. It's super digestible, like Inval said, just so easy. Even just listening with my eyes on the other screen, it's really good. I have a question about paying yourself, because you were talking about, comparing yourself to the industry, but when you're in a entrepreneur position, like really you can't see what other people are paying themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your take on that? Because it's so unique for each one. Like everybody, maybe not from the 10K months, like how much of those 10K are really going into your pocket and into your family or to your budget? So just wanted to touch on that.
Okay, so I'll tell you, first of all, it gets so under my skin when we talk about like we hit 10K months.
Oh,
I hate it because nobody's being truthful. And like profit is really, and how much we're paying ourselves is the indicator. So what I would start with, what industry are you in, Natalia?
I'm a brand and website designer.
Okay, so I would start by looking at like corporate, what do they take home? Like what would somebody in your position in a kind of like corporate structure take home? So is there another agency that you can go and look at the job postings for that position? So the reality is in business, like a really great, I should have covered this, the really great starting point too, because business owners always tell me like, oh, I wear so many hats. I'm like, okay, well, when you go to that time audit and you're like, hey, I spend 20 hours administratively, you can be like 20 hours times what you're going to pay an admin assistant, maybe $30 an hour for a good VA. Okay. $20 times 20 hours times $30 for a VA. And then I spend this much of my time on website design. And then, so then you can kind of look at like, okay, well, what, you go to Indeed, what's a web designer, or even Glassdoor, like what's a web designer getting paid? And then also here's some time I spend running my business, and we can kind of put a number to that as like, I'm the manager. I'm a high performer. I'm probably paid a little bit more than these positions combined. But that's how I would go through and be like, what do I really earn? Like, what is my role worth in this business?
I like that. Thanks.
Super. The thing about that is like, I always hope that we like exceed that. I always just want though to start there. For example, like when I started my accounting firm, it was like, here was my administrative duties that I probably shouldn't be doing. And I'll eventually pay this much to somebody else to do. And then here's my role as an accountant. And then here's what I get paid as a business owner. And over time, that's going to evolve because we'll be doing more business owner activities and less maybe production activities if we hire employees. But that's where we're going to start.
I love the conversation. And I mean, what we do at my company, it's more like purpose-based. Like we just want to support your purpose. and then talk about the money. So I think without having that 10K, you know,
Yeah.
elephant on our shoulders, it just feels so, it's freeing to like pursue your purpose, grow your business from like a purpose perspective, and then like focus that on the numbers.
Well, and like 10K means something so different to everybody.
Yeah.
Like, you know, 10K, depending on your industry, may not be that much. It might be a crazy amount. And, you know, maybe that's hard to achieve. And then for yourself, like, I don't know, how many hours do you want to work? So like, I don't know, like those numbers are so arbitrary to me that I'm just like, I don't know who came up with these.
I love it. I love it. I think if I pay myself 2K, but I have 40 hours to spend with my kids, like I feel rich AF. So, I mean, just it's a different angle.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And definitely like the biggest thing for me is really delivering value to your clients. So just before we were talking, I was talking to Allie, who was on the call. She's a friend of mine and we were DMing, and she was talking about a course she's going to put out. And she's like, oh, I'm going to put in a component that's like, I'm going to give some one-on-one. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm launching a course next month. I'm doing the exact same thing. There's going to be 2 one-on-one calls. You know why? Because you'd never go to university and put out and sign up for a course and be like, I don't need the instructor. I'm going to learn from this textbook. Like, no. So when we come at anything from the heart, we are going to deliver better to our customers, and they're going to want to pay you more. We can go back to the owner pay and be like, hey, I've got extra cash left. Like, let's revisit what this is worth. But coming from that heart-driven perspective of like, I want to help people, it all tends to work out. Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions?
I love that, Stacy.
I'll get off my soapbox. I kind of get carried away when it comes to like that heart-led. People think like, ooh, we got to talk about money. Like they're going to tell me to cut expenses and cut what I do for people. It's like, no, double down on what matters. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Do you guys have any other questions for Stacy? This was so, so good. Do you want to drop the workbook in here? Do you want to send it to me? Totally up to you.
I'll send it to you. Is that okay? And it can go
Yeah.
out with the replay.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course. That's perfect. All right, ladies. Thank you so much. Stacy, thank you so much for taking the time. This was awesome. Tomorrow we have our co-working at 10:30 Pacific, 1:30 Eastern. So I hope to see you guys there, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.